About 30% of world trade squeezes through one narrow gateway, the Strait of Malacca and the Singapore Strait. This is a global supply chain forced into a corridor. In a recent year, over 94,000 ships passed through this route, and at the tightest point near Singapore, the usable passage shrinks to about 1.7 miles, roughly 2.8 kilometers. If this gate slows down, the ripple hits fuel prices, store shelves, and factory lines worldwide. Look at the map. Malaysia on one side, Indonesia on the other, and sitting right at the edge of the lane, Singapore, a tiny island city-state at the crossroads. Zoom out and the contrast gets brutal. North of Singapore is the mainland running up toward Thailand and Myanmar, countries many times larger. Yet this small dot sits on one of the most valuable sea routes on Earth. If ships avoid Malacca, there isn't one simple reroute. There are multiple routes through Indonesia. That's why you see two very different distance penalties. A shorter detour, roughly 1,250 miles, about 2,010 kilometers, or a longer detour, roughly 2,860 miles, about 4,600 kilometers. And that can mean days of extra sailing, more fuel, higher costs, delayed deliveries. Why would any ship be forced into the longer route? Because parts of Malacca are tight and shallow. Some very large ships sit deep in the water. That's called draft, and they need deeper, safer passages, so they're pushed into longer Indonesian routes instead. So the strait is not just busy, it's physically limiting. Singapore is tiny by national standards, limited land, extreme density. It sits about 100 kilometers from the equator, so the environment is hot, humid, and harsh on machines. Perfect conditions for corrosion, wear, and constant maintenance. But Singapore turned that limitation into a business model. It became the fastest, most reliable pit stop on the planet. Singapore doesn't need a toll booth at the strait. The money is made when ships stop. A vessel pulls in, refuels, takes supplies, gets inspected, fixes issues, and moves on. Containers switch ships, documents get cleared, the finance and insurance behind the voyage gets handled here. This maritime cluster is often described as contributing around 7% of Singapore's GDP and supporting roughly 170,000 jobs. For a country this small, that's a huge slice of the economy. Singapore is also the world's biggest bunkering hub. In a record year, it sold about 55 million tons of marine fuel. Ships arrive with problems. They leave ready for the next ocean. Singapore also moves a staggering number of standard shipping containers, tens of millions in a single year. A huge share is transshipment. Containers are not for Singapore. They're transferred ship to ship like a global relay race. That makes Singapore a switchboard. Cargo arrives on one ship, leaves on another, and the system never stops. Now, Singapore is scaling the concept even further. Tuas Megaport. This project is designed to become one of the biggest container hubs on Earth. When fully completed, the planned capacity is about 65 million standard containers per year. Think about what that means. Automation, self-driving yard vehicles, optimized crane flow, faster turnaround. Because in shipping, minutes become money. So how does a small place run a machine this intense? Singapore is famous for strict enforcement. Clean streets, heavy fines, tight regulations, strong surveillance and planning. Some people call it too strict. Others call it high-performance governance. Either way, it creates something shipping loves: predictability. And predictability is currency. Here's an underrated fact that explains Singapore's engineered society. About 80% of residents live in public housing known as HDB. That's state-scale planning, not just real estate. Add the cost pressure. Housing, education, space, everything is expensive. That's why fertility is often discussed as very low. Many couples delay kids or have fewer. It's a controlled, optimized system under extreme land constraints. And yet, Singapore sells a different image too. Green skyline, super trees, futuristic parks. If you want talent, capital, and headquarters, you build a city that looks like the future, even while running a heavy industrial logistics machine behind the scenes. Being near the equator also means insects and disease risk. That's why Singapore runs aggressive mosquito control, inspections, enforcement, and regular operations. Even nature becomes managed, like traffic. With this much traffic, crime follows. The region has recorded dozens of incidents of piracy and sea robbery in a single year, especially in the Singapore Strait area. Sometimes it's small theft. Sometimes it's dangerous boarding at night. And every incident increases costs, security, insurance, delays, again feeding back into global prices. That's why the surrounding states coordinate patrols and surveillance, because this lane is too important to leave unprotected. Big powers care because the world still runs on sea lanes. Singapore cooperates closely with major partners on maritime security, and it's strategically valuable for operations in the Indo-Pacific. And some countries work on Plan B routes. China, for example, invested in overland energy connections, including pipelines through Myanmar, partly to reduce exposure to a single choke point. About 30% of world trade, over 94,000 ships a year, and a choke point only 1.7 miles wide, about 2.8 kilometers. That's why Singapore and the Strait of Malacca are not geography. They are world trade in physical form. A tiny island running one of the biggest machines on Earth. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and write in the comments which city, choke point, or topic should we cover next.